med schools are looking for, one, can you handle the academic rigor? And two, do you have some of the beginnings of those qualities that you're going to need to grow into to be a great doctor and not just a great medical student?
Ask the Dean, episode 51, live with my friendly map team.
What?
3/4 of my map team. We have a new member that yet to be announced, but soon we're excited to announce her. Dr. Scott Wright, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Dr. Ryan Gray. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. And Miss Rachel Grubb, I see you have our good friend Sunny Nakai's pre-med prep book on your shelf back there.
I do.
Yeah. I love it.
I ordered that a while ago, but I'm very slow about opening packages.
That happens. I just noticed. How are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, I'm excited to get into some pre-med questions.
Yes. National Pre-Med Day, as you can see on our banner, is 5/28, nationalpremedday.com. We just confirmed our 30-something speaker today. I think we have one more spot left to finalize. We're looking for a great guest for that last spot. So nationalpremedday.com. Was it 8 hours of goodness on Friday, May 28th, all live, but obviously will be recorded for everyone.
Yep.
Yay. Okay.
Be there or be square.
National Pre-Med Day.
Yes. Right. Let's rock and roll. Anything else before we start?
No, let's jump in. Oh,
let's jump in.
Uh-oh, you and I are fighting for control.
Well, Put that question back on. Removed it just in case you wanted to.
No, you're fine.
Want anything else? Physicians told me to downplay or not mention in interviews my desire to one day help in management and also consult in biotech, since those would put into question my desire to treat patients. My pre-med advisor said I should talk about those desires. Is there a fine line? Connected to this, I'll be a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives. Interesting, when I apply. So is it silly to not mention it? Dr. Scott Wright, the medical school application.
Yes.
Student coming forth saying, I want to be a doctor. How much of the medical school's job, the admissions committee's job, is to produce future physicians who take care of patients, or produce future physicians to go out and do whatever the heck they want?
Yeah, I don't think, in my years of experience, that rarely came up. In a admissions committee meeting, we would talk about the applicant, what they were saying they wanted to do. If they did talk about future plans, etc. Many students don't really get into that, talking about future kinds of things.
And you don't even know.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would say, I would not worry about it so much. I would focus in for this student. I would focus in on what is their desire. I understand the competing sort of advice that they're getting. What do they want? Do they want to mention this? Or is this an important part of kind of what their plans are potentially in the future? Because the way I view it, and I think the way that often admissions committees will view this sort of thing, is that, the role of the physician is multifaceted. And, we have physicians in Congress right now. I'm sure that we have physicians, depending on in state legislatures all around this country, on city councils. And so they go into politics, they go into public health and really focus more on the bigger picture. There's a lot of different avenues for usefulness for trained physicians. Obviously, we need them for patient care, and the vast majority, the way vast majority of them, that's what they're going to do. So I don't have a concern about that, frankly. In my view, I would say just do what is in your heart, what you're thinking in terms of your future. And I would say, if you're going to mention something to that effect, then I would say, I would hasten to add in words that kind of soften it to say I may want to, I could see myself going into, clinic management or hospital management or whatever in the future, or in ancillary fields, depending on sort of how things play out or whatever, something to that effect.
Yeah. Does this go in the personal statement, or is it going to be part of their activities list? Because their actions are more around that.
Yeah, I would say in this particular case, I think this applicant was really concerned that if they didn't mention it in the because of the activity of that particular receiving that particular award or whatever it was, being a fellow in that particular thing, that it would be odd. And so I would say activity description, definitely, if it worked in and it made sense in the personal statement, potentially, but definitely in the activity description for that particular thing, I think would be appropriate.
Okay. There you go. That's the final answer.
Yeah. Now,
go ahead.
Before we go into another question, were you going to answer something to this question, Ryan?
No.
Okay. So before we go into another question, I wanted to bring up tonight that this is the time of year, these 2 weeks, where before AMCAS in particular can be submitted, where students begin to really freak out about what does early mean in terms of early application. And I think we ought to just talk about that for just a moment, because I get the feeling that some applicants think when we say apply early or get your application in a timely way, in early fashion, that they think that means the day it opens, you got to submit it.
9:01 a.m. Any later? You're dead.
Exactly. And so
I
thought,
actually recommend not applying on the first day because of the history of
the
just
mass
first day issues with AMCAS going
right,
crashing, bugs from the new stuff that we introduced.
Yep. And when I talk about early application, I mean within the first several weeks to a month. If you're like for example this year, I would say if you can submit your application in the month of June, that would be fine. That's what we mean by early. What we're saying is don't wait until September or October, or even if you can get it in and get it completed and everything before sometime in August. June is fine. So applicants, if you're out there listening to this podcast or to this watching this video, take a deep breath. You can do this. You can survive this. And don't feel like you got to push the button on the first day or the first 2 days or 3 days. That is not that important. The admissions committees aren't doing anything with these applications until mid to latter part of the summer anyway. So you want to get in the mix of processing for AMCAS or the application service that you're applying to. But once you do that, and I will say also that TMDSAS, God bless them, their processing time, because they do it, it's a different procedure, and but they get those applications out to the medical schools really quickly.
They have a parallel process versus a serial process, like
correct.
ACOMAS.
That's correct. And so what they're working on is really less than a week. ACOMAS and AMCAS are going to take longer because of the process they go through. And so what I would say is get it in month of June, if possible, and you'll be fine. Yeah.
That's typically what I recommend as well.
Just wanted to bring that up because these are the days when everybody's really freaking out.
Make sure your application is good, your essays, all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, all of that's good. If you're concerned about waiting an extra week for those transcripts, wait. It's okay.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Just take a deep breath, a few deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, sighing as you do. You'll be fine.
Rachel should be leading this.
I know, right?
Yogi.
We need to come up with a little app for pre-med relaxation and mindfulness techniques.
I am actually starting yoga teaching that, of course, I will invite all of our pre-meds to in July. So if you guys want to follow me on Insta, I'll get you the updates there. But we can keep with the pre-med questions right now.
Yeah. All right. A couple of pre-asked questions. Can you please give any advice for secondary headshots? Can the background be nature, like in front of a tree? And should we wear just a suit? Should long hair be up or down? Scott, you guys used to have have a wall of shame or whatever you called it.
We did. Yeah, I've seen so many crazy pictures over the years. It's just insane. It's literally insane. This question asker
is way ahead of
yes, you're fine. If you're thinking in these terms, you're thinking in the right way. Nature's fine in the background, or a blank wall, or whatever. Just don't, just don't.
Do I hold my AK-47 in the picture?
Yes.
Or my Colt 45?
We used to get so many funny ones. It was unbelievable. Where there's
isn't that like a prereq? No.
Yeah, you have to submit a pic. And we would get, where they cropped out somebody, but there's this phantom arm on their shoulder or whatever, from where they cropped everybody out except for the arm, or, which was kind of funny. You would not believe the pictures that we get submitted. So anyway, just
doesn't have to be super plain background as long as it's
as long as you can see the face, and get a friend to do it with your iPhone. You'll be fine. It doesn't have to be a professional photographer. It doesn't have to be anything special or whatever. In a suit or even a casual, business casual type collared shirt or whatever, or blouse, you'll be that's just fine. All they want to do is, in most cases, what they're trying to do is put a picture with a name, so that some schools will use it to make sure that the person that shows up to the interview is actually the person who submitted the photo or whatever. But it's to personalize your application in an even greater way. And so just don't submit something that's, if you wouldn't submit it for a job interview, then don't submit it for this.
If I'm projecting my hours, should I break up the dates into current hours and future hours? For example, should I put hospice as 8:20 to 5:21 for current hours and then 5:21 to 6:22 for future hours, or just group them all together? It's a very common question this year. I've never gotten this question before this year, as far as I remember. So let's state it again. AMCAS specifically tells you to project out your end date and your hours. Don't split it up. You don't need to do that. You can just group it all together.
Right.
TMDSAS has a futures activities category, so don't project out on the regular section. There's a future one there. And a COMIS, I believe, tells you not to project out.
So it depends on where you're applying. Which service you're applying to.
Yeah. Double check a COMIS. I'm pretty sure that's what they say, but I get it all jumbled in my head every now and then. And last question here. Hello, Dr. Wright. What are we, chopped liver, Rachel? Hello, Dr. Wright. What qualities are you looking for in a reapplicant? There are 2 questions on the TMDSAS application for reapplicants about improvement, and I don't know whether I should answer them as a matter of fact or reflect on how my experience has influenced me. Thank you.
Always reflection. Always is good. I think that what they're looking for a reapplicant is not only factually, what did you do to improve your application over the course of the year, but also they're looking for, is there some sort of reflection that you're going through to say, okay, what does this mean to me? What is this all about? How has this affected me, and how am I moving forward? What have I learned through this process of having to reapply? And I think reflection is always a beneficial thing. And so I would say both of those really fit together well, and you should sort of think of it as a package and not as separate things.
So this is the first time, and shame on me if this is true, there are specific essays for reapplicants for TMDSAS?
Short, very. I would not even call them essays. I'd call them short response questions.
Okay.
They're not very long. I mean, probably. I can't remember.
500 characters. Like
maybe even less than that. Yeah. Okay. So it's not a big thing, but you do have plenty. You have enough room to say this is what I did over the course of the year to improve my application. And
a little reflection box.
Yeah.
Are they potentially looking for some self-awareness to say,
oh, absolutely.
I realized that last year when I applied, here's what I was missing. Here's what I did to work on it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just checked the MAP application section and it's 600 characters. And the prompt is, what have you done to strengthen your application?
Okay. So
yeah, it's just one of those, I agree with Scott in the wording of written response. It's you check yes or no. And if it's a yes, pops open a little box for you.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're ready to go to more.
Yeah.
So.
Is it okay to add personal things to our activity descriptions, or is it too much? For example, I based my undergraduate research on depression in students of color to honor my friend who lost her battle with depression. I know it can be a taboo topic, so I wasn't sure.
Well, first of all, I'm really sorry that you lost your friend, and I'm sorry for her and her family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And kudos to you for being a friend to her and to really, struggling. Sounds like you struggled with her through that battle. And but yeah, I mean, my feeling is in activity descriptions, it's not too much. I do think adding personal feelings and thoughts to those activity descriptions, but particularly if it's the most meaningful, when you have obviously a lot more space to do that. But even on the AMCAS application with 700 characters, you can get into some story and some personal reflection on that. And I would not consider it a taboo topic at all.
Yeah. I say it all the time, and I'll say it again. Your application is to show who you are, and that's why you did things is potentially a part of who you are. Go for it.
Yep.
I received my MCAT score last week, and I am beyond happy with my 514. Woohoo! Congrats.
Woohoo! Yay!
However, as expected, I got a 124 in cars. Do you believe this will be a major issue? No. Will I be screened out? No. I'm trying not to find excuses. No. You're fine. Good job. Great job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and kudos to you. You're an ESL. You were an ESL student, and I mean that's amazing that you 514 is a healthy score, and so I that's awesome. Awesome.
Rachel, typically when I see ESL students who get a great score like this, but struggle with cars, my gut tells me, because the whole MCAT is reading comprehension.
Right.
My gut tells me that their reading comprehension is perfectly fine to do well on cars.
Right.
But there's this little voice in their head that goes, I'm ESL, therefore I shouldn't do well in cars. And therefore it's a self-perpetuating kind of philosophy of negative self-talk during the tests. And
yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, I've definitely wondered that too, because exactly the entire exam is reading comprehension. And I have known, back in the days when I worked for a test prep company that specialized by subject, I have known verbal only teachers who hadn't taken sciences since high school who killed it on the exam in all of the sections solely based on the reading comprehension. So, the reading comprehension takes you far in those science section, guys. This particular student is someone that, I won't say their name because obviously privacy, but like we know them, we did an Am I Ready with them. And based on practice tests, they were anticipating a not great CAR score. So for whatever reason, that's been a struggle point. I think sometimes part of it is that the topics can be boring, right? So if you don't find, like you might be a better science reader because you find science interesting. And, the CARS topics can be, can sometimes actually will still be science, but they might be, literature or philosophy or whatever. And I think some people just tune that out. yeah, it's an interesting thing to me because I don't see the other sections as not reading, and yet there does still seem to be this discrepancy.
Yeah. Good job, and yes, cancel your retake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Move on to the next stage. Let's see.
For ECs that you will continue through the application process in the foreseeable future, how do you decide when the cutoff is for counting the hours? Do you count them up to the date you will send in your application? So for everyone, just general blanket, read the manual. The manuals will tell you what to do. AMCAS, again, specifically tells you up to your anticipated start date, your anticipated matriculation of medical school, which is typically considered July or August of 2022 for those of you applying this year. That is how.
Yeah. Those handbooks are your best friend.
Yeah, they are.
Talk about a boring read.
Yeah, right.
They should put that on the cars section. When we said this about international transcripts, did we mean A?
Do you know how many times I had to read that thing before I finally understood?
That is specifically why I chose that section. It's the most confusing section.
Yeah.
It's so it's a lot. Okay. All right.
Do you advise taking a half-length diagnostic or full length? I took the blueprint half-length. I assume this is a good starting place. Rachel.
Yeah, I think a half-length is totally fine. The one thing a half-length doesn't give you is your sense of endurance for the super long day. But almost nobody does as well as they are eventually going to do on the MCAT on their baseline exam. The whole idea is just rip the Band-Aid, get exposed to what it feels like, get a sense of where you're scoring so that later you have something to measure against and you have a sense of strengths and weaknesses. But I think full lengths are pretty precious and I wouldn't want to burn one on a baseline. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the half length, because it's not testing endurance, is a better kind of predictor of where you're at without adding in the fatigue aspect that you'll have to build up over time.
Yeah.
Bueno. What factors outside of stats make an applicant competitive?
Their picture, the picture they submit.
The picture you submit. Yes. Right. Everything. Your personal statement, the story you tell there, how you reflect on why you want to be a doctor, all of the activities that you've done to prove why you want to be a physician, prove to yourself that you want to be a physician and why you want to be a physician, research, volunteering, everything. Coaching soccer at a high school soccer is part of it. That shows a lot of intangibles about leadership and organization and communication and all of it.
Absolutely.
I think it's just, there's so much just focus on MCAT GPA, and just the rest goes out the window. So I love this question, but it's a really broad question because it is everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is.
Yeah. We did a workshop last fall and it's still on map.tv if you guys want to watch it or if you haven't seen it, about some of the competencies that med schools are looking for in their applicants, right? And you're not going to go into the application and be like, I have this competency, right? It's part of why we talk about storytelling. You're trying to show those things through the experiences that you've had. But I mean, to whoever asked this question, I mean, I understand exactly what you're asking, and I too love this question, but think about the kinds of things you want in your doctor. If someone you loved was really, really ill, you wouldn't just want a brain, right? You'd probably want some kindness and you'd want an ability to collaborate and you'd want someone to listen. And, it's not a perfect system, but to some degree, med schools are looking for, one, can you handle the academic rigor? And two, do you have some of the beginnings of those qualities that you're going to need to grow into to be a great doctor and not just a great medical student?
Yep.
Yep. For non-trads with 15 to 20 years since high school, how do I best go about narrowing down what to mention in personal statements and activities? There's a lot to sort through. Right. For AMCAS, it matters. For COMAS, TMDSAS, you got all the space in the world. So AMCAS, 15 spots, Scott, for someone with that amount of time behind them. How do they figure it out?
Yeah, I think you have to, when possible, collapse things together. You can combine things that are similar with each other. And you have to, for AMCAS especially, you have to really just focus in on those particular 15 activities that you feel like are the most important things to you, that you want to remember. What you're doing is you are presenting to the admissions committee what you think are important things about you. And I suspect that's why they're limiting those 15. I don't know why they're limiting it to 15, but I suspect maybe it has something to do with that. I would like to think there's some sort of philosophy behind it, but who knows? I would say, they're looking to see, what do you think are the things that really illustrate who you're about and why you're going down this road? And you really have to highlight those things over time. I have a lot of non-traditional students who are in this very same position with a lot of years that they have to cover. And what you're not doing is filling out a resume here. This is not, particularly in a personal statement. If it reads like a resume, no, that's not good. You want it to, but especially in terms of the activities, descriptions and stuff, I really feel like you have to hone in for AMCAS on those things that you really want to communicate to the admissions committee, a specific thing about you. That's why I think you have to go through reflection about in putting this activity on there, what am I trying to communicate to the admissions committee? What's the takeaway from putting this one on there, as opposed to these other three that I'm going to leave off?
Yeah.
Really hone in on what's your goal here for that activity, and what do you want to get across in terms of that description to the committee.
So, Scott, sometimes I use a little bit different language when students are asking me. I'd like to get your take on it. I typically tell students who are in this situation where they just have a lot of activities, what do you want to talk about? When you sit down to write something, or when you imagine sitting down in an interview to talk about something, what will you just light up talking about?
Right.
And maybe it's not getting across, ooh, look, in this other thing, I can show my communication skills, but it's just kind of, it doesn't really light me up as a person. But this other thing where maybe it doesn't connect with a skill that I think doctors need, but it's just, I just love it. It drives me.
Yeah. No, I agree completely, Ryan. That's you said it much better than I do. That's a lot of what I was trying to say in all those words. But yes, yeah. Spot on.
Yeah, who are you as a person?
Yeah.
What makes you tick? Right? Your whole identity is not future doctor. Like, let's learn a little bit about you.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned that, Scott. I've always complained about the 15 spots, and not really complained, but it's always frustrating for students, right? Of only having 15 spots in AMCAS. But I think it forces students to sit down and think, right? There's a saying for like public speakers, like, can you give a talk? Well, sure. How long's the talk? Right? If it's an hour, I can talk right now. If it's 30 minutes, give me a week. If it's only 5 minutes, give me a couple weeks. I got to figure out what I need to say.
Yeah.
And so it really forces the student to take inventory of what they've done in their life and figure out what's the most important. And that really helps the admissions committees not sort through a bunch of trash.
Yeah. That's why TED Talks are so great.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the weeks and months that those people giving those TED Talks put into that short amount of time to be able to effectively communicate what they're passionate about, or what they're really trying to get across?
Yep.
You're exactly right.
So a follow-up question to that is, a student says, so it's not bad to talk about an activity from 15 years ago?
No.
Yeah. The age of the activity shouldn't typically come into play unless it's a high school activity.
Yeah.
All please. There we go.
Hello. Thank you for such a great resource. I'm a non-traditional student. I've been taking science prereqs over the past year and will continue this year. I applied to an MPH program for the fall of 2022. However, I applied before I fully decided I wanted to go full force with medicine. Should I consider doing the MPH or fully focus on finishing my science prereqs? What will doing the MPH help since it's under a school of medicine? Thank you. Couple questions to ask there.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling about that is focus on the prereqs first. It's a possibility, depending on where you go to medical school. If you're really interested in public health and you're really thinking, I think what I want to do is separate doing the MPH for the purposes of making your application a stronger application, as opposed to doing the MPH because you feel strongly about public health and what you want that to do as a part of your career in the future. So to me, those are two separate things. A lot of med schools, you can do an MPH along with your med school experience, or at the very least, by extending it 1 year. At some med schools, you can integrate that into your medical school experience if that's something that you're passionate about. If you're doing an MPH for the purposes of improving your application, that's not. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I would say the prereqs first, definitely, and then look at kind of where you stand relative to the strength of your application, and if you need to do some additional work to make it a stronger application, then you could consider doing an MPH. But I think that step back a bit and view the bigger picture of what are you, why are you doing the MPH as opposed to anything else that you can do to improve your application. And if you're combining the two together, this passion for public health you have and the desire to improve your application, that's great that the two fit together. But I'd focus in on the prereqs first, and then decide kind of where you stand and what that might lead you to.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, love it.
All right.
Does doula and newborn care specialist work count as clinical? Teaching expectant parents about pregnancy and childbirth, supporting them in person through the birthing process, teaching them about newborn care, breastfeeding, infant sleep, etc. once baby comes home. I never take vitals, but it's always patient-facing care, most of it in their home. I work with clients prenatally and intrapartum, sometimes exclusively postpartum. Does the timing of care affect whether or not it's clinical? Scott, what do you think?
I think it's clinical.
1,000%. That's an easy one. That's clear. Yep. All right. There's always a lot of confusion. Does it have to be in a hospital? Does it have to be in an outpatient setting? All right. Patient's home. You're working with them through their pregnancy.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. That's clinical.
I agree.
And that's cool work.
Yep. I'm very sensitive to this right now, as you know. Ryan and Rachel know. I don't know if the greater world knows. My youngest daughter is pregnant with twins, and so we're going through all this right now, and it's super exciting to witness all of it.
Mm-hmm. It happens every day, and it's still a miracle every time.
Yep.
It's wild.
Yes. I was going. Oh yeah. Pause this question real quick. So for all of you watching now and in the future, Mapped is opening up for PA students, pre-PA students. So if you have friends, classmates, roommates, if you are friendly with your advisor, let them know that Mapped will soon work for pre-PA students. We're putting some final touches on. We have a couple more weeks of development for that. And when you sign up, congrats, Grandpa Wright, one student says. Grandpa, right? I love it.
I don't like that. Thank you.
What's up, Dr. Grandpa? When you sign up, the registration process will ask you what path are you on, pre-med or pre-physician assistant. Pick the one you're most kind of tied to, and if you change your mind, you click a button, and presto changeo, mapped will then adjust to you. So instead of having an MCAT field, you'll have the PA-CAT and GRE field. Instead of med schools, in terms of a list, you'll have PA schools in that list, and you can flop back and forth as you change your mind.
Yep.
So
awesome.
check that out. All right. Back to the question.
I'll put that. We'll have it in the doobly-doo, and it's on the banner and the ticker right now.
You know that nobody knows what you mean by when you say
You know, they're gonna know because I'm gonna say it enough times that eventually they're gonna be like, "Oh, doobly-doo and description box are equivalent terms."
Yeah,
I'm not giving up this
below the
ghost.
video.
It's gonna be like eccentric grandma who like uses old-fashioned terms, and they'll just be like, "Oh yeah, that's just the way that lady talks." All right. Whoa. See, the only thing is that when we do that, I lose my place. From the perspective of adcoms. Yeah, that was it.
From the perspective of adcoms, does it matter if a junior undergrad splits their senior year into 2 years, attending half-time while obtaining clinical experience and shadowing, or would you rather see this applicant stay consistent and graduate full-time and gain these experiences during a gap year with the application year remaining the same? Scott, very micro kind of question.
Yeah, very micro. And, I would say there are many different paths to medical school. I would say choose the one that you feel most comfortable with. And I don't really see that matters a whole lot. I would say I can see some students doing it one way and somebody else doing it another way for a variety of personal reasons. And as long as you are able to explain kind of why you did it the way you did it, and if that, for example, came up in an interview, why did you go part-time during your senior year? You can just explain, well, this is kind of what I was thinking. I could have done it this way or could have done it that way, and it just worked out better for me to do it the one way. And the one thing I would say about part-time work at the undergraduate level is that if you fall to part-time, a lot of your financial aid eligibility goes away. So just keep that in mind, that if you're and check all of this with your financial aid people and others at your undergraduate institution to make sure that you're not going to jeopardize any kind of the way you're financing your school. Scholarships often require you to be a full-time student. So just make sure you check all that kind of stuff out. When we're talking on this granular level, those are things that you need to be concerned about.
Yes. All righty.
I have my application ready, but didn't do too well on the MCAT, not out of the question for DO schools. Oh, I hate that comparison.
Yeah.
And may retake. If so, can I apply and then submit the retake score June test date? I don't want to apply too late.
Well, I would say a lot of medical schools, when they see that you're going to be taking a later test, they're going to hold until they get that score.
Yep.
So, I would say if you're in a June test date, go ahead. You can go ahead and submit sometime in June and be fine. But just know that may, at many schools, just kind of put you in a holding pattern until they get that later test score in.
Still potentially beneficial just for the process of being verified and everything, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. Don't wait on the new score to submit.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear around. They'll see my 495 and they'll just think it's a joke and just reject me. But knowing that I have a score pending where I'm going to score 520, schools won't punish you for a poor score. Poor score and 7 tests ago.
Oh my gosh.
And 7's the max. That was a good pun there, Ryan.
I know. This is how I roll.
Yeah. Good pun, bad pun.
Can you comment about BSMD programs and any advice? All right.
Yeah, but there are not very many of these around. There's a few around the country, BSMD programs.
30, 35 maybe.
Yeah, there's not, and they're not large programs. They're small scale. And I worry about these. I mean, they're sort of built in this notion of the sort of European, structure of medical education, where you come straight out of high school and go into med school, basically.
Yeah, 6 years of med school.
Yeah,
college,
right.
Med school.
Exactly. And so I worry about students that really, because often, not all the time, but often you get students who are very young in these programs, and because they have rushed their way through high school, they maybe they completed high school in 3 years. Then they go into a BSMD program. Sometimes, I question the motivation and the purpose for this for some applicants if they're trying to rush their way into things. And I philosophically feel like the college has a lot of experiences that you're going to miss if you do something like this. I think there's a benefit to the college life experience and having to go through, not having to, but the ability to go through and enjoy your college experience as a destination in and of itself, and not simply as a journey to some other destination.
No. Yeah, I don't like the programs just fundamentally because of that. Right? I think it adds a lot of undue stress.
Yep.
A lot of these programs have requirements that you have to meet, and if you don't meet them, you're going to get kicked out. Well, if you get kicked out, so what? You'll be like every other pre-med, applying to medical school at a later date. So there's just so much stress, and like go to college and figure out what you want to do there.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I know every European program is different, but their high school experiences often take them a little later in life.
Mm-hmm.
So often they're not actually graduating until 18 or 19, and often they take a gap year. So even with those 6-year plans, they still often end up getting the MD somewhere around, mid-20s. And I think that this U.S. tendency to rush, and again, it's not like, for one thing, there's a lot more countries in the world than U.S. and Europe, and neither of them have a stranglehold on education or moral authority. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think, I don't think they're necessarily bad, but you do a lot of growing in college, and it's like the last safe place that most students are allowed to grow. I mean, I know college is not a picnic for everyone, but for many, many people, it's the last time in your life that you're really going to have any playtime at all.
Yep.
And it's not like you have a lot as a pre-med anyway. So I would want to savor that a little bit.
Agreed.
Yep.
Okay. Another question about application timing, but we answered it before. I think some of these came in before we got to them. Let's see. Here's an interesting one.
Oh, yes, I saw this one. Today, I found out that I've been granted a 4-semester retroactive medical withdrawal from undergrad back in 2008 and 2010. Congratulations. That's huge.
Yeah, that's
I'm currently in my first semester of community college and getting a 4.0 and have done a complete 180 academically. How can I authentically address that period of my life without being explicit about the mental health struggles that resulted in 4 semesters worth of W's? Since I know that candid discussions of previous mental health problems can be a yellow or red flag to adcoms. So just a clarification for a lot of people who don't really understand retroactive withdrawals is you can petition a school that you've done poorly at. And I've helped some students do this and say, look, hey, I was young, I was dumb, I had mental health problems, I had these other things going on, whatever it was. I didn't understand what was going on. Can you make these W's? Really is the process. And every school is going to have their own process on how they handle those requests. If you potentially think you're in a situation where you have some bad grades that maybe are all Fs and you want to see if you can get them off the board, ask. Right? It doesn't hurt to ask to find out what the process is.
I agree.
And so that's what this student did. They petitioned the school. They said, here was my situation at the time. I wasn't maybe aware enough to know what I needed to do. And so the school gave them W's. It's typically a long process, so don't rush into it thinking, "Ooh, in 2 weeks I can change all my F's to W's." So check that out. But back to the question, Scott, where potentially can this come up in an application?
So this is I think that obviously their academic record is going to show this. It's going to show the 2 years of W's. And so the question is going to be, what's this all about? I mean, it's a fairly uncommon situation. And I think uncommon situations sometimes get highlighted because the admissions committee doesn't understand what it means. And so I think if there's no explanation about what it means, it leaves the admissions committee to not know what to do with that. And so yes, I think that I understand the caution of this student in going into too many details about the mental health struggles and stuff like that. But I would say there is a way to do that in a manner that will be appropriate and not lead to not give too many details that maybe you're uncomfortable with, but just say, I was struggling with, life, or I was struggling with some severe or some issues that I had to resolve, and my college granted me this backtrack on the W's, and I since have been able to resolve these issues, and now I'm doing well. And you don't have to go into excruciating detail, but I do think some level of explanation has to come out for the admissions committee to understand what is this.
Yeah.
I want to just sometimes I think these things get nuanced, and sometimes we seem to be contradicting ourselves. And I want to just really dig into the wording of this. So this person said, I know candid discussions of previous mental health problems can be a yellow and red flag to adcoms. And certainly we have said that before, that they can be. I don't think they have to be.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it is like, we're all working as a people on destigmatizing mental health. And by the way, if you want to talk more about that, we've got a session about it on National Pre-Med Day. Logan Noon and I are going to do some brass tacks talking around it. But some of it too is that if you tell the story like you're in the middle of the issue, then they may read you as like struggling, versus if you've talked about how you've turned your pain into your power and how you've gotten beyond it. And again, in this particular example, because everything is nuanced, this person says, they're only in their first semester, but they're already getting a 4.0. So presumably, if that pattern persists, it doesn't have to be a 4.0, but if they continue to get great grades, that's going to show a lot of the overcoming of the prior issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to personally chime in that I don't think it doesn't have to be a yellow or red flag to bring up mental health issues. It's more about if you seem to have figured out your coping skills or not, because med school may well trigger those issues.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, good for you.
Yeah,
Sounds
good word,
like you've
Rachel.
been on a journey.
Yep. Yep. And and that's the key here too, is that the student indicates that they're in their first semester of going back to school and community college and doing well. But these events were occurring back in 2008, back 2010. So there's a lot that has happened, even that, clearly you've been working on this for some time. And, maybe you've held jobs, and maybe you've done volunteer work, and, a variety of other life experiences. So it's not just about the academics, that it's also about the things that you've done in the past that have built you into the person that you are, and that made you, potentially made you a stronger individual. That enable you to really handle life in a much better way.
Yep.
All right. We didn't do this one yet, right? No.
I got a foreign BS PT degree, and WES eval says GPA is 2.77. I think even taking lots of credit would not increase my GPA. Should I just take the prerequisites and show upward trends? All right, so translation, they have a foreign degree. Their credential evaluation, which is something that students with foreign degrees have to go through typically if they want some evaluation here in the U.S. Admissions, a service will look at your transcript, verify you went to the school, look at the school, and try to do some math and figure out what your U.S. equivalent GPA would be. And so that's what this WES evaluation is. So my question, Scott, is for most students, they need a lot of credits, right? There's this kind of general rule of thumb, 90 credit hours of US credits.
That's right.
I say just forget your degree and just go back and get another degree.
I do. I do too. I think that's probably the best thing to do is just feel like you're starting over. Now that can be discouraging to a lot of students, and I completely understand this particular student, and that would be very discouraging to me if I was on the other end of things. But I just, I think it's all going to be as with many situations, in this particular situation, I think it's going to be a test of your desire to go to medical school. And if you're willing to do whatever it takes and to make some sacrifices in your life to make that happen, then it likely will mean that you spend 3 or 4 years doing college work that is going to produce in the United States what the med schools are looking for to help evaluate who you are as an applicant. And so academically, I agree with you, Ryan. I would just say, just go into it thinking I'm starting from ground zero and I'm going to just do this again.
Yep. And for other people potentially wondering how that works, if the student goes back and just basically redoes their undergrad here in the States, their foreign degree basically gets ignored. That their GPA from their foreign degree just doesn't show up anywhere as long as they're not transferring credits in.
That's correct.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's going to get ignored even if you don't want it to. So sometimes starting over is your only choice.
Yeah.
All right. We've got time for one more, I think.
Yeah.
Will it be looked at negatively if I quit my full-time nonprofit business career for a scribing opportunity in Surg Onc? I feel like I need to be in the clinic setting for my own journey since I've been full-time elsewhere.
I'd say go for it. If you can financially do it.
The bank may look at it negatively.
Yeah. Or your credit card
so.
deals. Yeah. Well, that's true. But no, I would say go for it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to, no. I can't imagine how an admissions committee would make something negative out of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Yeah, I would think if anything, it's the flip, right? I think we've had some students say, I don't think I can afford to quit my job. And I'm like, you shouldn't have to.
Yep.
Like you should.
That's usually the question.
Yeah. Oh,
You
want to read that one? That's nice.
Student said, just wanted to say thank you for the wealth of knowledge you all share with us. This process is long and difficult and stressful. You're an anchor.
That's very nice.
That was so sweet.
We also got a lot of these. Yay.
Grandpa Right.
Well, we're in the process right now deciding what we want to be called as grandparents. So the baby's grandmother has decided on Honey. She's going to be called Honey.
Oh, one of those.
Honey. And I made the decision, and we fully recognize that the kids are going to call us whatever they want to call us.
Yep.
Right.
It may be something totally different or whatever, but my initial, we're going to be Honey and Boo. So
nice.
So y'all can just call me, as opposed to Grandpa, just call me Dr. Boo.
Yeah. We do Nana, Papa, Grammy, Grampy in our house.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
Yay. Thank you all for coming. Here's another nice one. I wouldn't be applying to med school this year if it wasn't for you all. I passed the AP Psych test, but still took Psych 1010 in college. Does that count as retaking? Oh, they added a question. Darn it, they snuck it in. No, that does not count as a retake.
No, it is not.
That was sneaky.
That's the boo.
Thanks,
I
Boo.
love it. I love it.
All righty. Thank you all for coming. Episode 52 next week.
Coming up. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
And National Pre-Med Day next Friday.
Yep.
Hope to see you there. Sign up even if you can't make it. I mean, it's 24 hours of live stream in an 8-hour period. So you'll be watching some on replay any way you slice it.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.